I was so proud of her because she was always so, most of the time, you probably will have lived it.
He once closed his eyes to enjoy her voice like tasting the finest bourbon of his life. But just weeks later, he did something Gladys Knight once swore she would never forgive, a betrayal at her weakest moment. What she discovered afterward wasn't just betrayal, but a truth that cost her everything, coming from the person she trusted most. Who was that man? And why did Gladys Knight, a woman who forgave almost everyone, say, "I only hate 5 men, and he's one of them"? Now, at 81, Gladys Knight is no longer staying silent. She's ready to name them, once and for all. Don't look away, because you're about to hear names that could shake the entire American music industry. If you've ever seen a woman betrayed by someone she trusted, leave a comment. And if you believe the truth deserves to be heard, even when it's painful, subscribe to the channel for stories never told before.
She's gonna present to you, you ain't got to be hand clapping, you ain't got to be on it.
In 1944, in the heart of Georgia where signs still read, "Whites Only," a black baby girl let out her first cry. No one could have guessed that her voice would one day make all of America bow its head. Her name was Gladys Knight. She wasn't a manufactured star. She was a flame that lit itself in a musical winter, where black women were told, "Don't sing too loud." But she didn't hold back. And she didn't stay quiet. At age 4, she sang. At 8, she won a national talent contest. At 16, she became a mother. At 20, she brought her whole family on stage, giving the world Gladys Knight and the Pips, a name now etched in the history of American soul. With the group, she won 3 Grammy Awards, including 4 Midnight Train to Georgia, a Billboard #1 hit later inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame. As a solo artist, she added 4 more Grammys, performed the theme for License to Kill, was honored at the Kennedy Center, and earned a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. She became known as the Empress of Soul. But behind the spotlight was a dark room. Lonely nights after the show. Men who promised to stay, then left without a word. She sang to comfort others while being left alone herself. And the first to abandon her wasn't a fan, a journalist, or a rival. It was the man who kissed her while she still wore her wedding dress. He wasn't famous, rich, or the most powerful man in her life. But he was the first to undress her as a bride, and the first to walk away when she needed him most. Not because of war, not because of poverty. He left for a reason Gladys has never forgiven, not because he left, but because he walked away knowing she was bleeding, praying, and still foolishly believing he would come back. From that day on, the woman who once sang about love stopped believing in it. And when she speaks of him now, only 2 words come out: regret. But what about the audience? If you listen to the story that follows, you might feel anger for the young girl who once believed love was enough.
Concerts and stuff, and I felt, and so I asked him if we could do it that way, and he said, "Oh."
He wasn't famous, powerful, or remembered in music history. But he was the first man to undress Gladys Knight in her wedding gown, and the first to walk away when she needed him most. Not because of war, not because of poverty, but for a reason Gladys has never been able to forgive. He left her while she was bleeding, while she was praying, and still foolishly believing he would return. James Newman didn't love music, he was addicted to control. He loved the way Gladys trembled when she hit the high notes, as if he was the one who gave her that voice. On their first night, he leaned in and whispered, "You sing like a symphony only I get to hear from backstage." Gladys was just 16. A year later, her youth shattered with a single note, "I need time." She was 5 months pregnant, bleeding, in pain, and James was nowhere near. He was in Vegas, reclining by a roulette table, sipping whiskey, and telling nightclub dancers, "I once slept with the sweetest voice in America." Meanwhile, Gladys was signing performance contracts to pay her hospital bills, still getting on stage, covering the bandage between her legs with a sparkling gown. 3 years later, he showed up backstage, smiling like he hadn't shattered someone's soul. "I miss you, miss the way you gasped behind the curtain." She looked him in the eye and said coldly, "Tonight I sing for a man who's dead to me. And if there's another life, I don't want him reborn as human." James didn't hit her. He didn't have to. He left behind a broken dream, a fatherless child, and a woman who smiled while stitching together the pieces of her own heart. Years later, when her son asked, "Did you ever love my father?" she didn't cry. She smirked and said, "Love? Like a first hit for an addict. One try was enough to ruin my life." James, the first man to kiss her in a wedding dress, was also the first to make her stop believing in men. And what about you? If your mother had been left alone in an emergency room with an ectopic pregnancy, could you forgive the man who did it? Leave a comment below. And if you believe the truth should be spoken, even when it hurts, subscribe now. This is only the first name. If James Newman made her lose faith in love, then Barry Hankerson, her second husband, taught her that some people don't need to leave to betray you. Barry didn't disappear. He was always there, in every call, every document, every sweet public word. But behind the scenes, he was the one who tore apart Gladys Knight's freedom with golden clauses and contracts she only read through trust. Did he love her? Maybe. But he loved power more. He said, "I'll protect you from the traps of showbiz." But in the end, he was the biggest trap of her life. He was her husband, the father of her second child, her manager, her treasurer, the one who signed contracts in her name, her legal representative, the man who decided her tour schedule, her fees, and whether she got to rest or not. He built the empire of Gladys Knight and Company, and then used that very empire to lock her in. By day, he called her the Empress of Soul. By night, he buried himself in paperwork, reassigning all her copyrights under his own name. She kept singing, kept touring, kept burning out, and he quietly gathered everything that was hers and made it his. By the time Gladys found out, it was too late. Her name, her voice, her songs, they all legally belonged to Barry. Their divorce wasn't just the end of a marriage. It was a disarming of a time bomb. A war between a woman trying to reclaim her voice, and a man grinning behind a boardroom table. Barry didn't walk away with love. He walked away with the assets, the custody, and nearly all the profit from the brightest years of her career. And to this day, when Gladys speaks of him, she says only one line: "I once slept with the man who drafted the will for my downfall." If James was the first stab, Barry was the man holding the knife. But he didn't stab, he signed. No blood. No screams. Just one signature, and she lost almost everything she had built with her voice. And then, she thought no one could ever hurt her that deeply again. Until the third person appeared, not a stranger, but someone from her own blood. They say, family is where the storm ends at the door. But for Gladys Knight, the storm began right behind the back of her own brother. Jimmy Newman, the co-founder of Gladys Knight and the Pips, the one who once shared bread with her, who held her backstage when she was exhausted, was the very person who made her never want to hear the word family again. In the group, Jimmy managed the finances and signed contracts on her behalf while she toured. Gladys trusted him, they shared a mother, came from the same poverty. But what she didn't know was that while she was singing in Paris or Houston, Jimmy was secretly skimming profits, signing side deals to pocket extra money from shows she never knew about. She only found out when she received a tax notice for income she had never heard of. Gladys didn't cause a scene. She stayed silent. And at the next concert, she bowed to thank the audience, but never introduced the Pips again. From that night on, she left the group. No tears. No press conference. Just picked up the mic, and never let anyone share it again. Jimmy once said, "No matter what, we're still blood." But Gladys only responded once, "To me, being blood doesn't mean you have the right to bleed me dry." If James made her lose faith in love, and Barry stole her freedom, then Jimmy was the one who destroyed what little trust she had left in family. But the deepest pain in Gladys Knight's life didn't come from a man. It came from a woman, who once held her hand and said, "I will never betray you." Not every stab comes from a man. Some are sharpened with red lipstick, sweet smiles, and begin with, "I've always admired you." Gladys Knight once believed in sisterhood, until she met her, a young backup singer on the 1985 tour. Gladys once stepped out of the spotlight to let her perform Midnight Train to Georgia as a way of passing the torch. She called Gladys, "Queen, the reason I became a singer." But just a year later, that little sister signed a solo deal to perform the hit, on the very stage where Gladys had just been cancelled. At first, Gladys thought it was a misunderstanding. Until the press revealed she had taken Gladys's demo recording, changed a few lyrics, and registered the copyright under her own name. That song, breathed into life by Gladys, no longer belonged to her. That night, the young singer sent a handwritten card, "Thank you for paving the way for me." Gladys didn't react. She tore the card in front of her assistant, then walked on stage at the next show and said only one line, "Not everyone who calls you sister deserves to be called family." From that day on, she never collaborated with another female singer. For Gladys, trusting men cost her marriages. But trusting women cost her the soul of a song. And painfully, that betrayal wasn't the end. Because the fifth person didn't just steal her music, he nearly erased the name Gladys Knight from American culture altogether. Not a husband. Not a colleague. The one who brought Gladys Knight the deepest pain was her own son, Hankerson. She once lulled him to sleep with her Grammy-winning voice, named a restaurant after herself so he could manage it, gave him her fame, her fortune, and all her trust, only for that very son to drag her into court. Gladys defended Shauna against every warning, believing a mother's love would keep him on the right path. But Shauna fell into partying, alcohol, women, and embezzled millions in taxes from the Gladys Knight's Chicken and Waffles restaurant chain. Worse, he used her name to sign contracts, open accounts, and evade taxes. And when the government issued an indictment, they didn't call his name. They called hers. At 70, Gladys Knight was pulled into scandal by her own child. No apology. No confrontation. That night, she took down every photo of Shauna from her walls, not out of hatred, but out of the deepest shame a mother can feel. When asked, "Do you forgive him?" Gladys replied, "I forgive those who betray me. But I will never forgive someone who used my name to commit crimes." To her, Shauna wasn't just a scandal. He was a wound, from within. After everything, Gladys Knight still stands on stage. Not to please the crowd. Not for glory. But for one reason only, she wants to reclaim her right to speak, after being silenced by those closest to her. Those 5 men, each one was a blade, cutting away pieces of her youth, career, family, and dignity. But she didn't fall. She sang. She sang to survive. She sang for every woman ever crushed by family ties, by love, by promises spoken in gentle tones but carrying hidden knives. She named them, not for revenge, but for release. So the audience could understand that behind every song is survival. A pain kept silent for far too long. And what about you? Of those 5 names, who made you the angriest? Who made you think of yourself, your mother, or a woman who once gave up everything for someone else? Leave a comment below, because we want to hear your real voice. And if you believe women should never be silenced, hit subscribe. There are still many truths, yet to be told. Loretta Lynn's story didn't begin with a glittering stage or $1 million contract. It began in a remote place called Butcher Holler, a hidden pocket of land in the Kentucky mountains where coal was king and the poor lived only if they could bear it. In the town of Van Leer, the coal company controlled everything: the houses, the stores, even the wages. Loretta's family lived in a one-room house so cold and cramped that she slept on the floor until she was 9. But the cold was not as painful as the ear disease that forced doctors to drill a hole in her head to save her hearing, and her mother, penniless, walked dozens of miles a day to care for her. In the darkness of poverty, Loretta sang on the porch. It was the first stage, where words cut through the mountain mist and touched the hearts of her neighbors. A voice born of suffering, and a harbinger of the rise of a legend. On a cold morning in 1948, Loretta Lynn, a 15-year-old girl, entered a loveless marriage without the blessing of her parents. Her husband, Oliver Doolittle Lynn, was a rough man who showed signs of violence early on. Just hours after the wedding, Loretta received her first slap for telling a meaningless joke. From then on, her life entered a series of dark days, beatings, lonely nights, broken dishes, and one time she hit back and knocked out her husband's tooth. Doolittle was not only the one who hurt her, but also the one who led Loretta into music, not out of love, but because he saw that she could make money. He ordered and controlled every decision, and Loretta just obeyed. 2 years, Doolittle said. But 2 years became 10, and 10 became a lifetime. She toured, exhausted, and still had control over everything. Her fame was high, but Loretta's personal life was not peaceful. Doolittle was an alcoholic, often disappearing for days and returning drunk. The fights were repeated. It was easier to go on tour than to go home. But from that unhappiness she wrote her lifelong songs, direct, angry, honest. Don't Come Home A Drinkin' was a warning not only to Doolittle, but also to millions of women who lived in silence. The song won her the Female Vocalist of the Year award in 1967, but deep down, Loretta had never lived a life of her own choosing. She had gone from her parents' home to a suffocating marriage, then became an icon, not because she was empowered, but because she dared to turn her pain into strength. A controlled girl wrote her own legend. Before she got married, Loretta Lynn had been warned. Doolittle Lynn, the man she fell in love with, had a bad reputation, a womanizer, a mercenary, and no one believed he would be a safe haven for a teenage girl. Loretta's parents were vehemently opposed. But she married him anyway. And a few months later, they were right. When Loretta was pregnant with their first child, Doolittle suddenly disappeared with another woman, leaving her pregnant and humiliated. Her father was so angry that he almost disowned his daughter. But when Doolittle returned, Loretta forgave him. And from there, the hard days began, washing diapers by hand, carrying water, raising children, while her husband cheated on her, even with her sister-in-law. Loretta would not be silenced. When she heard that a woman was having an affair with Doolittle, she rushed out and grabbed her by the hair in the middle of the street, despite the other person's size and strength. She turned her anger into music. Fist City is not just a song, but a warning: try flirting with my husband, and I'll send you to the city to get punched. That's the fierce spirit of Loretta, protecting her family with both her heart and her fists. Becoming a mother at the age of 20, Loretta experienced 2 near-fatal miscarriages, a cesarean section while her husband was missing in the woods, and the hospital refused because she didn't have her husband's signature. She fought her fate alone. By the age of 22, she had 4 children. Once, the whole family lived on wild vegetables for 2 weeks. She wanted to return to her hometown, but with nothing, for small children, how could she travel 3,000 miles? Then the cruelest thing happened: she got pregnant with twins. She cried throughout her pregnancy, thinking her life would collapse. But when the twins were born, it was a rare light in the darkness. She wrote Once on the Way to talk about the extreme fatigue of having to give birth, raise children, and still have to dream. But it was the pill that really hit the spot. A song about birth control, bold and fiercely controversial in the 1970s, more than 60 radio stations banned it. Pastors denounced her from the pulpit. But Loretta laughed: they can ban it, but they can't ban women from listening. The controversy surrounding the pill once brought a 3-hour emergency meeting of the Grand Ole Opry after Loretta Lynn performed the song 3 times in one night. When threatened with a ban, she fought back. Despite being banned by more than 60 radio stations, the single sold 15,000 copies a week, becoming a powerful voice for millions of American women. While Loretta fought with her music, her husband Doolittle was a spendthrift, had affairs, and failed to provide for his family. Despite the quarrelsome and infidelity-filled marriage, Loretta stayed for the sake of her children. She admitted, without Doolittle, there would be no Loretta Lynn, the star. The greatest tragedy came in 1984 when her son, Jack Benny Lynn, died in a horseback riding accident. Loretta collapsed and was hospitalized for shock. In 1996, she stayed by Doolittle's side until his death. Despite the pain, their marriage maintained a special bond. Loretta Lynn went from a coal miner's daughter to the biggest country music star of the 1970s. In 1972, she became the first woman to be named Entertainer of the Year by the Country Music Association. Her peak continued with a series of prestigious awards. Her memoir Coal Miner's Daughter, 1976, quickly became a bestseller, was adapted into a film in 1980, and earned Sissy Spacek an Oscar. In the following years, Loretta reduced her recording activities but continued to tour and release new albums. From the album Honky Tonk Angels, 1993, with Dolly Parton and Tammy Wynette, to Still Country, 2000, she proved that she has never backed down. In particular, the album Van Leer Rose, 2004, in collaboration with Jack White won 2 Grammy Awards, affirming her limitless creativity. Loretta has received many honors: induction into the Country Music Hall of Fame, Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award, 2010, Presidential Medal of Freedom, 2013, and Kennedy Center Honors, 2003. A true legend, living, singing, and inspiring a generation. In 2016, Loretta Lynn released the album Full Circle, marking a complete musical journey with a combination of tradition and new creativity. During the recording process, she said she saw the ghost of Johnny Cash, a country music icon she has always admired. Loretta also recorded at Johnny Cash Cabin Studios, a place associated with the Cash legend and has become a sacred space for her. Loretta had a close relationship with Johnny's family, especially her son John Carter Cash, who later became her album producer. Such paranormal experiences were not unfamiliar to Loretta, who once lived in a house rumored to be haunted and even wrote the song This Haunted House about it. In her later years, Loretta suffered from a series of health problems, a stroke in 2017 and a broken hip in 2018. The tabloids even reported that she was dying, but Loretta denied the claims with a video claiming she was still strong, still fighting, and still singing. She continued to make music until the age of 88 with Still Woman Enough, 2021, her 50th career project, co-produced with her daughter Patty Lynn Russell. The album connected the past and present, refreshing legendary songs like Coal Miner's Daughter and Honky Tonk Girl and spreading a message of female solidarity. She also invited stars like Carrie Underwood, Reba McEntire, and Tanya Tucker to lend their voices, cementing her role as a trailblazer for generations to come. With over 45 million records sold, multiple Grammys, CMTs and CMA Artist of the Year awards, Loretta Lynn is not only a country music legend, she is the unstoppable voice of American women. Until the end of her life, she maintained her one desire, to write music until the day she could write no more. Before her death, Loretta Lynn quietly prepared for her end, selling off her personal belongings, arranging a memorial service, and expressing her wish to be buried on the family farm where her husband and 2 children were laid to rest. The 3,500-acre farm was also a popular tourist destination. On October 4, 2022, Loretta died in her sleep in Tennessee at the age of 90. Tributes poured in from all over. Reba McEntire imagined Loretta talking to her mother in heaven. Dolly Parton called Loretta her sister. Shania Twain and Carrie Underwood praised her pioneering spirit and her strong, humorous personality. Carly Pearce performed Dear Miss Loretta in her memory. Artists including Hayley Williams, Paramore, K.D. Lang, Kid Rock, Maren Morris, and Bret Michaels all shared touching memories of her. On October 7, 2022, Loretta was buried at the farm, next to her husband. She is survived by 6 children, 17 grandchildren, and 4 step-grandchildren. Her daughter Patsy was given the Nashville home before she died. In August 2023, the family partnered with Sandbox Succession, the music estate of Johnny Cash, to preserve Loretta's name and music for future generations. Thank you for listening to this mysterious story. If you are also passionate about the never-before-revealed secrets behind the spotlight, click like and subscribe now to discover more creepy truths with me.